Everyone, how's it going? It's Gunnison and welcome back to Spinnin the Tires. This last week has seen some interesting developments with drivers moving from place to place, and it saw one of the best races all year. So let's dive right in. Okay, so last weekend NASCAR went to New Hampshire Motor Speedway for its only race there this year. And the past few years, New Hampshire's been a little underwhelming. 2019, it did put on a good finish between Kevin Harvick and Denny Hamlin, who were dominant the past couple of years, but it's worth noting neither one of them has won yet all year. Really good race. The unfortunate part, I wasn't able to see most of it. I only saw the last maybe 100 laps out of a scheduled 300, but from what I hear, it was a very exciting race. Now, there was a controversial decision at the beginning of the race, though. They only got about 7-8 laps in at the beginning of the race because of rain, but there's been some criticism as to NASCAR's judgment on that rain, because apparently it was starting to mist and rain a little bit before they even dropped the green flag, which isn't a good thing. NASCAR can't really race on rain yet on ovals, short tracks like New Hampshire. So there's a little bit of controversy about that. They got underway though, everybody was fine. They ran about 5 laps, it was all good. But then it started to rain a little bit harder, and Kyle Busch, he spun around, hit the rear end of his car, hit the outside wall in turn 2. Simultaneously, his teammates Martin Truex Jr. and Denny Hamlin went around as well. So NASCAR threw the caution directly afterwards, and they eventually brought the cars down pit road for a rain delay. And Kyle Busch, who was the worst victim of the wrecks at the beginning in the rain, and the only one who had enough damage to justify him leaving the race, he wasn't able to finish. He was not happy at all with NASCAR's decision. Showed his displeasure at the pace car running right on the back of the safety vehicle there under caution. So interesting things happening. But as I understand it, after that they got underway. Stage 1, I forget who won that. I think it was Brad Keselowski in a really nice looking Freightliner and E-Cascadia car this weekend. And there's some big news about Brad Keselowski we'll be getting to later. But he won the first stage. I think second stage went to Ryan Blaney. And that's the point where I was driving home from somewhere. That's about the point where I turned on the radio. So I was able to hear most of stage 3, the final stage. There was a lot of battling from what I could hear going on, not only in the back of the field as there is on a lot of weeks, but actually for the lead. And from what I hear was some of the best battling for the lead ever at New Hampshire, and really in any race all year. So I was hearing about this on the radio, listening to the guys on the Performance Racing Network enthusiastically and dramatically call crazy moves happening for the lead between teammates Keselowski and Blaney. And just from what I could hear on the radio, it sounded like it was incredibly good racing. Now, you may recall last week on the last episode, I predicted the racing at New Hampshire this weekend would be above average. Had to give myself a little pat on the back because it was one of the best New Hampshire races ever. But the battling for the lead was fantastic. I got home here to the TV with about 100 to 90 laps to go. At that point, I believe it was Ryan Blaney in the lead. And they went through some pit cycles and so on. And then eventually, at the end, it came down to a battle between Eric Almirola and Christopher Bell. Two guys who, one of them, I think people kind of saw coming. Christopher Bell had won the Xfinity Series race the day before. He's been good here in the past. He's won the last 3 Xfinity Series races there, actually. But Eric Almirola, he's been decent here in the past, but with 25th, 20th, 30th, place speed all year, I don't think anyone expected him to go up there and compete for the win. So what happened was in the final 30 or so laps, Christopher Bell, after the pit stops, started to close in on Eric Almirola. Bell clearly had the fastest car on the track at that point. But there was an interesting factor in this equation. It was starting to get dark. New Hampshire Motor Speedway does not have lights, so NASCAR had to make a decision on whether or not they would be able to run to the finish or not, or if they would have to make an announcement that there would be just 10 laps to go in the race before it got too dark. Well, with about 19 laps to go, NASCAR said, that's it, it's getting a little too dark, so at this point we call 10 laps to go left in the race. So from that point on, they They raced to the end. They got into lap traffic. It got a little bit complicated, but in the end, Eric Almirola pulled away his third win of his career and his first that wasn't on a super speedway. Interesting little fact. But that was actually a really impressive drive, especially considering the struggles by his team this year, Stewart-Haas Racing. Christopher Bell, if he'd had extra 9 laps at the end, I think could have won the race very easily. The thing is that New Hampshire, it's hard to pass. The easy thing is catching the guy. The hard thing is passing him. Being hard to pass for the lead was kind of what made the racing fun. It was phenomenal stuff. But yeah, Eric Almirola ultimately won the race, and I'll be honest, looking back, it kind of seems like NASCAR could have just finished the race. I mean, 9 extra laps. It wasn't that dark at the track, but it was. It's not something NASCAR deals with very much, so I'll let him have some leeway on that. I think overall it was a great race, other than the rain that happened at the beginning. And again, I didn't even see that part of the race. Anyway, so yeah, fantastic race happened this last weekend. I do not have a race preview for this week because it is time for the Olympics. NBC takes a break for a few weeks for the Olympics, and so there's no slot for NASCAR races in the next couple weekends. But after a couple weekends, it'll be time for Watkins Glen in New York. So soon we'll preview that. That's going to be, I think, a very exciting race. It's been 2 years since we've been there. New York's sporting event rules did not allow for a Watkins Glen race last year. Instead, it was replaced by the Daytona Road Course, which this year became a scheduled race and may become a staple in the future. So sometimes those weird circumstances bring along cool opportunities, and the Daytona Road Course was an example of that. But anyway, we'll review that soon enough. But for now, we got a couple big pieces of news to focus on. First of all, NASCAR's new game, NASCAR 2021, is almost out. It'll be, I think, late this summer or early this fall. Newly designed game will be released. I know fans in the past have been a little frustrated with the physics and everything of the current NASCAR Heat series. So from what I've seen from renderings of the game, it's going to be a fantastic upgrade for NASCAR gamers. So hopefully at some point I'll be able to hop on and try it out because it looks fantastic. The realism is unreal. So yeah, that is pretty interesting. Also announced today, NASCAR is rolling out the next gen chassis to the teams. So they will finally be getting their chassis. Every team will. That includes new teams, of course, like Colleague Racing and GMS Racing. So they'll all be getting their cars finally so they can work on them and test with them. And these next few months with these cars are going to be some of the most important for these teams as they work on all the R&D of these cars, all the research, all the development, and getting these things ready for the 2022 Daytona 500 and beyond. So I think these next few months are going to determine who's the best teams for next year. So very excited to see what sort of things that teams can do. That, of course, indicates NASCAR was satisfied with the test results, the crash testing, and they did openly say that. So it sounds like the brief safety rumors can be dispelled for now. So I hope it's with legitimacy that we can get rid of the rumors, because I don't want to have to come back to this someday after we've had a really bad accident that injured someone. So hopefully we never get to that point. Hopefully this car is the safest NASCAR ever built. In that case, all for it. Perfect. Let's proceed. Business as usual. So very exciting to hear that NASCAR teams have gotten their chassis. Now we got to talk about the biggest news recently, and that is that today Brad Keselowski did officially, I know a couple weeks we said it was all but official, it was pretty close, but now officially it's been announced Brad Keselowski will drive for Roush Fenway Racing. Now, this isn't the big part of this news, however. This has kind of been known for a while. It's been a rumor. But the big part of this is, of course, Brad Keselowski is leaving the 2 car. And the plan with the 2 last year was, I think Brad was going to stay in that spot, and Austin Cindric was going to drive the 21 for Wood Brothers Racing, if I'm not mistaken. Well, now, of course, it was announced Brad Keselowski will run for Roush Fenway in that number 6 car. That left the number 2 open for Austin Cindric. So Austin Cindric I think he's been in Xfinity racing for 3 years. Last year's Xfinity Series champion will move up to NASCAR's top level next year. He's already shown his performance at road courses. I saw that when I went to the race in Texas, when he led about 4 laps at the beginning of that on slick tires in the rain. He wasn't running wet weather tires. He was running slick tires with no tread in the rain, and he was pulling away from the field. That guy has a mad amount of talent. I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do. He's been leading in almost every race he's competed in this year, at least on the road courses. So he's definitely deserving of that move up to Cup. Now this, of course, would seem to indicate that Matt DiBenedetto, the current driver of the 21, could then stay in his ride rather than having Cindric take that over. No, Matt DiBenedetto, apparently he does not have the funding Wood Brothers Racing really wants to keep him there. They see a little more value in Harrison Burton, a driver currently running for Joe Gibbs Racing in Xfinity Series. He's been there for the past couple of years. He's been pretty decent, nowhere near where Austin Cindric is, or maybe Cole Custer, Chase Briscoe, but he is a good driver, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he does in the 21 car of Wood Brothers Racing. Now, of course, this leaves a bad taste in a lot of fans' mouths, because you kind of got to root for Matt DiBenedetto. Such a great guy. He's just been left out of this ride. He has nowhere to go for next year that he knows of yet, so he's got to find a deal if he wants to keep racing in Cup. I personally think not many people are of this opinion, but I think he might find a lot of value with Front Row Motorsports. Anthony Alfredo's been underperforming a little bit there, so maybe he could move around a bit, and Matt DiBenedetto could take over the 38 car there. In past years, that hasn't been a race-winning team. Of course, they won the Daytona 500 this year, but I think Matt DiBenedetto and Michael McDowell would make a really good duo. They have similar personalities, worldviews, and I think the two of them would really mesh well, and it would create a better, teamwork to build up that team to the point where, especially with the next gen car, they could become one of the more dominant teams, especially at road courses. Both Matt DiBenedetto and especially Michael McDowell are exceptional at tracks like that, especially with this car sort of being built more for road courses and with NASCAR adding more of those types of tracks to the schedule. So I personally think that could be an interesting and good move for him, but it'll be interesting to see where he lands. A few more silly season, as we call it, things that are yet to be determined is Dale Earnhardt Jr. going to open up his Cup team? They've said really the only thing keeping him from going Cup racing with a driver like maybe Josh Berry or Noah Gragson is the charter system and getting a guaranteed spot in every race. And then the other big unknown, of course, is who will drive the second 2311 and the second Trackhouse car. So Kurt Busch and Ross Chastain, both free agents. We'll see if one of those guys goes to either one of those. So still plenty to be determined, but definitely some big news this last week. So it has a lot of implications because now this is an interesting scenario where Austin Cindric, this rookie, he's in this flagship car at Team Penske, and Harrison Burton, he's only in his early 20s, and he is going to be driving for one of the most famous teams in the Cup Series. So it's kind of this whole influx of younger drivers into very important roles. So these are the guys that are clearly going to move up and be the future of the sport. So I'm excited to see where these guys' careers go. But anyway, enjoy the Olympics if you watch them, and just the next couple weeks in general. I know summer's starting to come to an end. Sort of hard to believe it has been. It's felt kind of short, but it's been a fun one. I'll see you next time when we preview Watkins Glen. But between now and then, I do have a couple ideas for special episodes of Spinnin the Tires, so keep an eye out for that. Until I get those uploaded, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and I will see you next time here on Spinnin the Tires.